Good morning and welcome again. Today we'll be looking at the politics of prayer. I hope you have your book with you. If not, don't worry. It's still time to get it so you can follow along, read, have comments, and join in on conversations and questions you may have as they come up and I introduce new subjects. So just welcome once again. Today is the day that Governor Rick Perry called for invited governors to his state of Texas to come and unite in prayer. There are going to be a lot of, I'm sure, famous evangelists, TV personalities from TBN and the other stations coming to lend their voice. Great bands. Christian music has great singers and great bands and everything. But they're going to be concentrated on fasting, praying, and worship the Lord. I do not know how many hours this is. If it's a 24-hour event or a 4-hour event, but I'm sure many people who couldn't make it physically are joining in, looking on the televised. If it's televised, I'm not sure about that either. Or they are meeting locally in their churches, joining in prayer, or in their homes with all hearts united and minds united, focused on one thing: prayer and worshiping God. We know that atheists have tried to file a lawsuit saying this was not a separation of church and state, which they later lost because the governor wasn't going to be participating as a governor, but as a citizen, a Christian citizen, and he has the right to do such. So on this day of prayer, I'm hoping everyone is joining in, petitioning God, because it is a privilege to be able to pray and speak to God, and I don't take it lightly. I'm so thankful and so blessed that I can pray to God and He can hear me. So what I want to do as my contribution to this day, where people will be in one mind, petitioning God, worshiping, giving thanksgiving, is talking about what is prayer. And prayer is just a form of communication, but the communication is between yourself and God. And it's a two-way. Define what communication is, and just talk and discuss about what that is. Now, I start off in the book, The Politics of Prayer, in chapter 4, and the title is Pray for Government Leaders. And as the chapter begins, it talks about Harriet Tubman. Yes, the famous Harriet Tubman, who later became the leader of the Underground Railroad. Well, before she was leader of Underground Railroad, she was a slave. And as a slave, she was treated harshly by her master and beaten. And they had a practice. They could borrow slaves from plantation to plantation for parties or events or special occasions. And so Harriet Tubman was going to be loaned out by her master to another man who happened to be even meaner and worse. So Harriet Tubman used to pray to God that he would change her master to a Christian. But when she heard she was going to be loaned out to this horrible slave master, she said, well, if you won't change that man to a Christian, kill that man. And when her master died, she was completely shocked. She felt remorseful, and she realized that there was power in prayer. And she knew that from that moment on, she would be cautious and responsible for the prayers that she prayed. So after that, she went on and she ran the Underground Railroad. To go from knowing there's power in prayer to affect one man, her master, in his life. And she was using that power of prayer in her mind to cause harm. She wanted to be a Christian, but she said, if he can't be a Christian, kill him. And when he died, she was like, oh my goodness. She realized their power, and she was putting that power towards one person instead of praying maybe for the freedom of a whole race of people that would not have to live in such poverty, misery, abuse, and separation and just destruction of families. So she turned her focus, and that came about and bounced off of the power of answer prayer. So now let me read you what the definition I have in my book as the definition of prayer. And The definition of prayer is the act of communicating with a deity, especially as a petition or an adoration or contrition or thanksgiving. So we pray in petition, adoration, I adore you, which Brian Fisher said would be part of what today's prayer would be: adoration or contrition and thanksgiving. And this is an example, so it is very clear. The priest sank to his knees in reverent petition to the deity. So it lets you know that it is contrition. It is saying, I thank you for being in my life. I worship you for being in my life, sovereign Lord. Prayer is also an entreaty, an earnest or urgent request, an entreaty to stop the fighting, an appeal for help, an appeal to the public for calm. They have that under prayer. A fixed text used in praying. Some people love having a fixed text because it embodies everything they want to ask for. It can be given written form to a larger group to have strength and pinpoint accuracy as they may perceive it, concentration and the power and the validity behind the prayer, with masses praying the same prayer, and someone who prays to God. And that's the definition of prayer. And I want to talk a little bit more about prayer. The word prayer is used over 245 times in the Old Testament and 67 times in the New Testament. The Hebrew word na is a participle, participle of incitement and entreating, which may usually be rendered I pray now, I pray then. It is used 9 times as I beseech, which is I pray, you, thee, which is you, go to, and now. It is the most common use of the word for pray in the Old Testament. Now the New Testament is written in Greek, and the word prosyokoahi means supplicate and worship. Supplication is a humble petition, an earnest request, and entreaty. Prayer is our effective way to communicate with God. Communication. That's what I'm going to define next. So prayer, an entreaty, thanksgiving, supplication is our, as I say our, as Christian, effective way to communicate with, not to, but with God. Prayer allows the individual to be in a two-way conversation with the Creator. Most individuals would consider themselves as an effective communicator. I'm an effective communicator. I can communicate with 2 people, get my point across. I communicate well. Well, that's what prayer is. Communication between you and the Creator, instead of you and like your children, what it says communication gap. But most people think they are an effective communicator. Just to make sure there's a clear understanding what we are doing when we use our communication skills. Even in prayer, we take our communication skills in prayer. Let's define the word. The definition of communication is as follows: an act or instance of transmitting. We are transmitting our heart when we talk to God. A lot of people say, oh no, it's just words, but God sees heart. God knows spirit. So we're communicating our heart, transmitting our heart to God when we pray. It's an open channel for Him to see our heart. Information is communicated verbally or in written form, and it is verbal when we're on our knees, hands raised, heart exposed and lifted to God, and He searches it, and He knows. A process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. In its plural form, communication in a system, as in telephones for communicating. a system or route for moving troops, supplies, and vehicles. Communication can also be plural but singular or plural in construction. A technique for expressing ideas effectively as in a speech, which I am much better at than staring into this little hole here and talking for a while. Prayer is human communication with God. Communication implies two entities engaged in dialogue. There's an attempt of being understood and gaining understanding. So that when we pray, we're praying for others, and it's an attempt at being understood, being heard, and gaining understanding. Let's read what Peter wrote about this